Good evening. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at Casco Bay High School in room 200. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Atkinson.
Here.
Ms. Seeliger. Ms. Van Dill.
Here.
Ms. Davis. Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Morioni.
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Balfons.
Here.
Ms. Clater.
Here.
Ms. Farah. Ms. Yuri.
Here.
And Ms. Power-Rakowski. And Chair Tavaro.
Here. And Mr. Rodriguez did let me know that he is traveling back from Florida still. He won't be in until late this evening, so he won't be able to join us. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the report of the chair this evening, I just wanted to let board members know that we did last week on Tuesday present our budget to the City Council. So it's now in their hands. Mr. Atkinson, Mr. Balfons, Ms. Davis, and Ms. Vendel were all there, so thank you for attending with us. And on Thursday, this Thursday, we will be workshopping the budget with the City Council's Finance Committee. That'll be Thursday evening. I believe that'll be followed by a public hearing for them as well. And to report of the students, we have Casco Bay High School, Ms. Yuri.
Perfect. Is this on? I think it is. Good evening. My name is Tiana Yuri, and I'll be delivering the report of the students for Casco Bay High School tonight. So even though summer seems very close, Casco Bay is on the grind. So today our juniors took the SAT, and I congratulate every one of us who made it through. I tested for 6 hours today, and even though it was long, I know we're all endeavoring to present our best selves for the good of our schools. So we're bringing the same drive to our future Task Force Summit, which is on April 26th. Each year, a task force of students, staff, and parents examines one aspect of our second decade plan and makes recommendations to the leadership team about how we can actualize it. This year's task force is looking at how we can fulfill our long-term aim to be the greenest high school in the state. On a more fun note, everyone is invited to see the CBHS Spring Play, which goes up this Friday, the 27th at 6 p.m. and the 28th at 2 a.m. and 6 p.m. We present the Spring Play, I Think I Know What You Mean, in the third floor Paz Dance Studio. Admission is $5 for adults and $3 for students. And moving into May now, we have NHS induction on the 3rd at 6 p.m. And then we have on May 4th, Better Boulevard Day with CBHS, King and Presumpscot students from 12:30 to 2:30 at Baxter Boulevard. So this event is part of EL Education's nationwide first ever Better the World Day. For the first time, students from Portland's 3 EL education schools will be partnering to share our great work, serve, and celebrate, all on Baxter Boulevard across from Hannaford. The freshman class at CBHS will be co-running activities with their younger counterparts, from planting trees to local activism, from performing to team building. All are welcome. Next, we have senior soapbox speeches in the evening on May 4th at Monument Square. Those will be something to remember, so please come. And then we have AP exam week and that's just happening. And wish me luck. CBHS prom is happening on May 12th from 8 to 11 p.m. at Mechanics Hall, which is sure to be a glamorous and fun event. And then we have on May 17th our Shared Space Cafe from 6 to 8 p.m. And this annual event is open to all parents, but geared towards multilingual parents. And we're going to be featuring refreshments with staff and entertainment and discussion with a panel of multilingual students to better fit the needs of our entire community. Like, what do parents need to know about your life outside of home? What do teachers need to know about your life outside of school? And that's important for all of us. And next, we have Players Work Culmination for grade 10. So May 18th, where the sophomores will race their derby cars, and a champion will emerge. Special good luck to Sophie Yuri, who will be competing. And our crew talent competition on May 18th. This is sure to be a wacky, wild time. Can't wait to see our own special brand of Casco Bay talent, and which is meant in a loving sense. And then we have our senior final words on May 21st to May 30th. So each day, 8 to 20 seniors will deliver their ultimate speeches. There will be 1 or 2 daily 90-minute sessions of final word during this stretch, which are always a very tearful and beautiful experience for all of us. And then incoming freshman family orientation, May 24th, 5:30 to 6:30, and culminating in spring family crew night, May 24th, 6:30 to 8 p.m. And all are invited to this semi-annual celebration of the CBHS community, showcasing great student work and updates on each grade level, plus a dessert potluck, which you can't miss. And so I'm so excited to attend all these events, and I hope to see all of you guys there too. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yuri. Report of the superintendent.
Darn, I have to follow that.
Good luck.
I think I'm in luck tonight, because I'd like to begin by recognizing Deb Kiersted, the face, the heart, and the voice of Casco Bay High School, who was chosen as the 2018 Secretary of the Year by the Maine Principals Association. Deb received the award on April 4th during the MPA's seminar for school and district secretaries, special education secretaries, and administrative assistants. The MPA's annual Secretary of the Year award is given to Maine school secretaries or administrative assistants who demonstrate commitment to their school through leadership, service, understanding, patience, and working beyond expectations. Ms. Kiersted is now completing her 20th year of service for Portland Public Schools. The last 13 as the founding secretary here at Casco Bay High School. Principal Pierce says of her, quote, you have to be careful when Principal Pierce is quoted. I've had the great fortune of being involved in hiring 2 staffs from scratch and in working with some of the finest educators in the state. Deb Kiersted may be my wisest, best hire. Deb treats each student with the same unconditional respect, openness, and love with which she treats her own children and grandchildren. Her reflective nature means that she somehow manages to get better every year. She is constantly puzzling over how we might improve our systems and practices in a healthy, non-obsessive way. End quote. While her contributions are many, I would like to point out a particular one because it represents how Deb has embraced the district's focus on equity. This year, Deb has happily put in additional hours to mentor a new office colleague, Olga, who recently immigrated from the Congo. When CBHS was in the hiring process, there were qualified candidates with strong traditional experience in American offices, but Deb recognized that the school staff needs to look more like the student body and advocated for hiring Olga. Principal Pierce points out that, quote, as usual, Deb has proven to be correct, end quote. We have many outstanding front office staff in all of our Portland public schools. They are the first point of contact for our families and keep our schools operating effectively. This is Administrative Professionals Week, so we recognize all of them, but we especially want to recognize Ms. Kiersted for her enormous contributions to Casco Bay High School and the Portland Public Schools. She exemplifies the commitment, dedication, and ingenuity of our administrative professionals, and it's wonderful to be able to recognize her as exceptional. So please, let's recognize her.
I want to thank you all tonight for this recognition. I especially want to thank Derek Pierce for hiring me in 2005. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but soon knew I would love it. And I do love Casco Bay High School, and Derek has this energy that goes through the staff, students, faculty. It makes us all become the best we can be. So thank you. Thank you.
I would like to welcome back all of our staff and students for the final run of the year. This is my favorite time of the year, filled with wonderful learning opportunities as we leave testing behind, sort of, and celebrations of all of the year's learning. I look forward to the many opportunities to share those events and activities with our families, students, and staff over the coming weeks. As many of you know, today, Alan Manga, a junior at Deering High School, competed at the National Poetry Out Loud competition. Alan is most deserving of this opportunity, but as many of you know, had to struggle to get there. This included suing the National Endowment for the Arts for attempting to bar him from participating because he's not a permanent resident yet. I would like to take a moment to thank the many individuals who made this possible, beginning with the school board, who agreed to join the lawsuit as a plaintiff. This reflects our district's commitment to removing barriers to equity for our students and protecting them from arbitrary rules that discriminate against them because of their national origin. I would also like to thank and recognize the leadership at Deering High School, particularly Principal Greg Palmer, who's been a tremendous advocate for Alan from day one. Alan's teachers at Deering are too many to commend, but I would like to single out Molly Callahan, who is in D.C. now with Alan and was the person who originally introduced him to the competition. Deering students and staff have shown what a school community should look like throughout this process by rallying behind Alan. As he left yesterday for the competition, he had a full Deering send-off with a pep rally, as we would expect for a national competitor. I'd also like to thank the attorneys at Drummond Woodson. I contacted them initially to ask if they thought the NEA could do that. From that moment, they became the advocates that Alan needed as we moved from questioning policy to fighting for his rights. Melissa Huey and her litigation team, Kane Smith and Gina McCormick, and our district's legal counsel, Bruce Smith. They've dedicated hours and hours of pro bono work, and we wouldn't be here if not for their dedication and skills as advocates. I would also like to thank the many other elected leaders who've expressed support and advocated for Alan. Congresswoman Pingree and her staff were in our corner from day one. They helped to advocate with the NEA and also helped to accelerate Alan's paperwork so that he would have a work permit and Social Security number in time for the competition. And I'd also like to thank Senator Angus King for his support. Our state delegation and our entire city council all joined in their advocacy on Alan's behalf. Many in the Maine arts community, particularly Maine Poet Laureate Gibson Faye LeBlanc, who rallied authors to write and advocate on Alan's behalf, and Gibson in particular gave many hours of his time last week to help Alan to prepare for the competition. Finally, my team, especially Assistant Superintendent Crocker and Executive Director of Communication and Community Affairs Grace Valenzuela, they've gone above and beyond to advise, advocate, and do whatever needed to be done to keep this process moving forward. There are many more who over the past few weeks have, in small and large ways, helped to keep the faith that Alan could succeed in this challenge. I have renewed hope and commitment for the because of the Portland community that has stood shoulder to shoulder with one of our own, and I love this city for that. As many of you know, Alan competed today in the Eastern Regional. If you got a chance to see him, you know that he was awesome. And yes, I'm biased. However, the judges did not agree, and he did not make it to the finals. But I am incredibly proud of Alan. I'm so grateful that he has had this chance to show his talent. There are so many great futures ahead for Alan, and I look forward to having him at a future board meeting to honor him for representing us so well. I wanted to let everyone know that the DOE granted preliminary approval to our Regional Service Center Part 2 application. This application permits the district to receive full administrative funding from the DOE this year. The conditions attached to the approval are all connected to the next steps that we and other participating districts need to take by approving the memorandum of agreement and seeking community approval. We will be dealing with that first step, the memorandum of agreement, in June after our budget is done, and as discussed previously, we anticipate bringing the partnership to a referendum in November. I want to remind everyone watching that this next Saturday, the Public Affairs Committee will be hosting a session on proficiency-based learning for the community. As you know, the state has recently relaxed its requirements around the graduation by proficiency policy. As you've heard me say often, proficiency is not about state mandates, but about ensuring that all of our students have every opportunity to graduate prepared and empowered. While the terms have become loaded with many meanings, not all of them positive, we will continue our quest towards implementing common graduation requirements and building the structures that support all students towards meeting and exceeding those graduation requirements. Assistant Superintendent Nally, several of our principals and teacher leaders will be on hand to share how proficiency-based learning is working today and our next steps in this effort. We intend for this to be an interactive opportunity with our community, so I hope you will be able to attend this coming Saturday, April 28th, from 1 to 2:30 p.m. right here in this room at Casco Bay High School. And finally, the PEA retirement incentive offering that you approved at our last meeting closed yesterday. I'm happy to report that we exceeded our estimates. Our program was built on 18 educators accepting the offer, and we have had 23. They're a great group of educators. As I've received and read their letters of intent, I've been impressed with their range of expertise, but also their firm commitment to the Portland Public Schools. So many of them have written about how grateful they are for the opportunities that they've had working here, including this incentive. So many of them have also written about how they hope to continue to contribute to the Portland Public Schools from their retirement. They are a most deserving group, deserving of our thanks, and I look forward to honoring them here before the school year ends. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Moving into report of the committees. Curriculum, Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to report out on our last committee meeting, which we had, sorry, hang on a second. My notes are in my phone. Okay, so our last meeting was on April 11th in central office, and I just wanted to let the board members know that we discussed the new middle school math that has been reviewed by lots of staff, and we got to get basically a full overview of all the work that has been done around selecting the new middle school math. It's going to be coming before the board, hopefully as a workshop, so we can better understand it as well as a full board. It's very impressive, all of the hard work that has taken place and a lot of data-driven decisions made. So just stay tuned for that. We did move it out of our committee to the full board. The next thing we discussed was the graduation policy and the revisions that needed to be made just to make sure it's in alignment, again, with our proficiency-based requirements and standards. So that also will be coming before the board soon. And one thing we also had on the agenda was the advanced placement policy, and we reviewed it a bit, but it was going to stay in our committee for further discussion and review. But our next curriculum meeting will be on May 2nd at 6 p.m. in central office. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did skip over a report of the secretary, so I'm going to go back to that before we continue. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of April 12th, 2018. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. Vendel. Are there any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the minutes? Seeing none, any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes of April 12th, 2018, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the majority. So next to operations, Mr. Rodriguez is not with us tonight. Is there anybody prepared?
I can report out on that. We had a meeting last Monday, and we focused on an update on the work of the facilities department. So we had Facilities Director Mr. Stilfen presented on the current work that's happening, the current organization. The Operations Committee is trying to do a level set for the new Operations Committee members on what all of our operations departments are engaged in. And so this was the first of those meetings, which will follow with one on food service at our May meeting, and then one on transportation at our June meeting.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Bendel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you indicated in your report, the school budget is with the City Council at the moment. We will have a workshop with the Joint Finance Committee this Thursday. But for our Finance Committee, we will have our standing meeting set for Tuesday, May 8th, from 6 p.m. at Central Office.
Thank you. Policy, Legislative, and Public Affairs, Ms. Seeliger is not with us. Mr. Atkinson, would you like to report in her place?
Sure, I'm not really prepared to, but give me a moment. I'll pull up. We had
Jeannie can-
Yeah, great. Yeah, Jeannie, thank
Okay,
you. We had
and
a
then
great
be
meeting
ready
last
to
night.
jump in for all the things I forget.
Okay, great.
We had a very productive evening last night, and I would begin by saying that the Policy Committee has decided to meet again very quickly on May 8th for our next meeting, which is different than is shown in the packet, in order to bring several more policies before the board before the end of the school year. Last evening, we addressed an update of the dress code, a policy that received a lot of attention over the past several months from high school and middle school administrators, and it is this group that brought forward those changes. We also worked on the policy that is around our student representatives to the school board and the possibility of adding yet one other school rep to our group, and that would be the Portland Adult Education. And so we'll look forward to bringing a revision to that policy forward to you. And on the agenda, though not touched last evening, but will on May 8th, will be a continuing look on our cell tower on Deering High School and a possible prohibition of future cell towers in the Portland Public Schools. So I'll just repeat again that the next meeting will be on May 8th.
The only thing I'd add is that on the dress code policy, the staff did an amazing job on that, and it came through, and we just said, "Wow, this is excellent as is." So I look forward to sharing that with the rest of the board. So thank you to Assistant Superintendent Crocker and all the principals who were involved in that process. Thanks.
Thank you both. Are there any other committee and/or member concerns? Seeing none, moving into consent items. Would the superintendent please read the consent items?
Yes, Madam Chair. Hall Elementary School received a cash donation to use towards paying off outstanding lunch balances from Lauren Epstein and John Winnicka of Portland. Longfellow Elementary School received a cash donation to use towards the purchase of library books from Gretchen Lane of Portland. Lyman Moore Middle School received gift cards to purchase basketballs for the girls' basketball team from Glenn McCrum of Portland. Portland High School received 2 cabinets and a bookshelf from Casco Bay Eye Care of South Portland. Peaks Island Elementary School received 15 seed packets to start a classroom gardening project from Alan Sterling and Lothrop of Falmouth. Casco Bay High School received a cash donation to support their 2018 junior journey from Unum of Portland. Casco Bay High School also received a cash donation to support their fall 2018 quests from White Pine Foundation of Portland. Portland Arts and Technology High School received the following donations: tracing paper and patterns for their woodworking program from Carmen Weatherby of Cape Elizabeth, a 2001 Ford Focus to the automotive program from Delora Fearon of Gorham, and a cash donation to the Landscape and Garden Program from the Cape Elizabeth Garden Club on behalf of Jim Massey of Eastbrooks Garden Center in Yarmouth in lieu of an honorarium for a program he presented entitled Exciting New Plants for 2018 in Cape Elizabeth on March 6th. Mr. Massey requested that this payment be used to benefit the PATHS program. So we're very grateful to all of our contributors.
Thank you. Moving into old business, we have consideration and action to approve a name for the new elementary school, either Amanda C. Rowe Elementary School or Fred P. Hall Elementary School. And I'll ask a member to move that motion, but when I call for a vote, I'm going to call for them separately, and you'll be asked to vote for one or the other, but not both. So moved by Ms. Thompson. Is there a second? By Ms. Davis? Would the superintendent or who would like to present on this?
Do you want to present?
Ms. Davis?
The Hall School Naming Review Panel has met, and we're bringing forward these two names. One would be to name the new school after Amanda C. Rowe, who was a longtime nurse at the school and a important person in the life of Portland Public Schools. And the other would be to stay with the Fred P. Hall Elementary School name, which has support as well, being the name that it has had for the past several years, and Mr. Hall having been someone who was apparently beloved at the time the school was named for him. You've been provided with the input that the committee received. We reviewed that input, looked at names that some of which were not really eligible. They didn't meet the criteria, and we brought forward these two names, and without a preference really for either one, feeling that it was up to the board to make a decision. One thing that the committee did discuss is whether whichever name is selected for the school, that perhaps the other name, we could find some way to incorporate that in the school, whether naming the gym or cafeteria or somehow finding a home for that name, because we felt that both of the naming suggestions were important to a number of people in our community, and unfortunately we can only pick one. So any questions about the process that we followed? You've been provided information, we've had input.
In a workshop.
So we're finally at the decision point.
Any questions? Seeing none, I would call for public comment at this time. If you have public comment on this item, you may approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board, and please start by stating your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Molly Thompson, and I'm here tonight with my husband, John Naylor. I want to start by thanking all of you for the work you all do on behalf of the children of Portland and for allowing us to speak tonight. John and I are the parents of 3 grown children, all of whom were fortunate enough to attend Portland Public Schools from kindergarten through high school, and all of whom were fortunate to have been impacted greatly by a remarkable woman and Portland school nurse, Amanda Rowe. In particular, my son Emmett recalls almost daily visits, as do I, to Amanda's office while in elementary school and middle school. Usually just before math class or after a particularly challenging recess encounter, Emmett would arrive holding his belly and asking Amanda if she wouldn't mind just calling his mom because he needed to go home. 9 times out of 10, Amanda's reassuring words of support would help Emmett rally, and her phone call to inform me of his visit would come only after he was safely back in his classroom ready to take on the rest of his day. Amanda was Emmett's anchor in the storm that was his childhood. Our daughter Finn learned the rewards of community service and serving a greater good through her work as one of Amanda's ice pack girls. She and a small troop of friends would forego some recess time each week to fill and freeze ice packs so that Amanda always had enough on hand for the day's bumps and bruises. Now 20 and in college, Finn speaks of Amanda as a significant mentor in her life. And I can't begin to express how much Amanda Rowe impacted me as a parent. She saw me through head lice and stress-induced tummy aches, but she was also a counselor when I was deciding to vaccinate or not to vaccinate, to flu shot or not to flu shot, to allow this one to have a cell phone or that one to attend a school dance. She was my mentor too. So let's do what we should do. Let's name a school after a remarkable woman who has played such a significant role in the lives of so many of today's Portland families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Webster, resident of Portland. My wife Linda and I also have 3 adult children who had the fortunate experience of knowing Amanda and attending the Portland schools. I appreciated the summary, the bio that you have in your packet on Amanda. As I read it, I thought, yes, that was Amanda, but it sums up a life well lived, but it's only a small vignette of that person that lived and worked and taught in this community. She was all of that and so much more. Marty from the University of Iowa says this about leadership. Says, a noble leader answers not to the trumpet calls of self-promotion, but to the hushed whispers of necessity. I think that was the kind of leader that Amanda Rowe strove to be. It was never about Amanda, but rather a reaching out to meet a need or solve a problem that affected our community and our students. Amanda believed in the dignity of all people, especially of the students that she served, and she lived what she believed. She worked hard to ensure that all students were treated with respect and dignity, no matter who they were or where they came from. She helped us as a community to understand and to deal with some difficult issues. I know there were those who disagreed with Amanda, but I know of no one who did not respect her passion and her dedication to the students of Portland. She was an advocate for all people, but especially for the students of the city. She spoke out on issues of local, statewide, and national interest with understanding and compassion. To name the school after Amanda would certainly be an honor for her, but more so, I believe, it would be an honor for this city to have a school named after such a remarkable, dedicated, and compassionate person who gave so much of her life to caring for this community. So I, too, hope that soon we will be able to refer to the Amanda C. Rowe School. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a while since I've been at the mic. My name is Peter Eglinton. I live at 189 Francis Street. I had the honor of being on the school board from June of 2007 to December of 2010, and then was the chair of the steering committee for the first comprehensive plan, and then moved on to being the chief operations officer from 2011 to 2014. And I've stayed away for most discussions, enjoying my time away, but miss you all. I wish I could be as eloquent as the prior two speakers. I just have a few notes to convey, and I felt compelled to be here today. I should say I'm not the most creative with naming, whether it's children, and we've done pretty well. I didn't pick the name. With buildings, with big projects, I tend to go for standard. And so I have to admit that when an open-ended survey showed up in my email, I just said Hall School because that was the simple way through. If I had had a choice and Amanda Rowe's name was on it, I would have chosen that, most likely. Why? I have the deepest respect for her and her legacy. We worked quite closely together on a lot of very difficult issues, one being the birth control issue at King Middle School. I was the one that had to handle all of the radio interviews, the national talk shows, and she was the source of strength and commitment to the cause, and it just continued from there. There was the clinics in the schools, human sexuality, student privacy. She was always out in front and never about herself. It was always about the students and about the district and doing what was right. And that came through strongly in everything that she did. She had a complete devotion to the students and the district at large. She had no fear of tackling any issue. And she would not come at it from a place of defensiveness. She came at it from confidence and from knowledge. And that really buoyed many of us. And even when she was dealing with declining health, she was a rock for many around her when she really, at that time, needed the strength from everybody else. And I think she got that from her interactions with everybody. She was kind, compassionate, smart, and strong. And the Overflow Memorial Service that she had was, I think, a testament to how she touched many in the community. So I reflected a little bit, thinking, is Amanda the only one that would deserve this honor? And I'm thinking, probably not. There are lots of awesome people in the district, both now and in history. But she is certainly worthy, and I would strongly support naming the school after her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marion Lloyd. I live at 147 Walcott Street, and I'm an Amanda fan, but I have two notes from two of the Ice Pack girls that are way off in college. The first one is Ida French, which is my daughter. Ms. Rowe was not just a school nurse, but a friend. I used to tell my teachers I wasn't feeling well so I could walk down to her office and talk to her. She was a selfless and kind person who would care for everyone. Naming the school after her would be a great thing to do in thanks of her service to Hall and the community. And the second one is from Catherine Miller, who's keeping it a little bit real. Hers is, I will never forget peeing my pants in the second grade from laughing so hard and running to Miss Rowe's office. I was horrified, but Miss Rowe had a clean box of clothes she kept for events like this or for the students who didn't have enough resources. As I cried from embarrassment, she gave me snacks and let me hang out in the office until I felt better going back to class. She kept telling me that accidents like this happen all the time. Whether that was true or not, her caring nature is something I will never forget, nor will I forget peeing in class. She never saw anything as too small or too big. Her attention to this minor incident still remains with me today, as well as the work she put into protecting young girls in the face of controversy. There is no better person to represent the school I grew up in, Catherine Miller. And then her sister actually heard of this, and so she just sent a sentence. In a world where access to birth control continues to be jeopardized, the work of Ms. Rowe has only become more relevant. Thank you for showing young girls in the greater community that small heroic acts can change the world. And that's from Deborah Miller. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Cindy Bartlett. I live at 16 St. Lawrence Street. And Amanda C. Rowe was a peer, a neighbor, and a friend. She was an excellent listener. She acted, and the children benefited. And I'd just like you to consider naming the school after her. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Lisa Bollinger. I live in North Yarmouth, Maine. But for 26 years, I worked at the Public Health Division and managed their school-based health centers. So there was a time when I was here in defense of school-based health centers. And you may remember, or those of you who were here at the time, remember that Amanda was instrumental in bringing them to the schools. So I was with her in partnership when the King Middle School controversy hit, and it wasn't just Peter who was taking calls. I can attest for the many calls that both Amanda and I took from Good Morning America that called the morning after the news broke in the paper. So I'm here to say that Amanda was a person who was forthright, feisty, fearless. She represented all that was good and had integrity. I learned so much from her as an individual and considered her a great partner in the 26 years that we worked together. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pete O'Donnell. I live on the Eastern Prom in Portland. I am here to speak tonight in support of naming the new school in honor of Amanda Rowe. Amanda Rowe was a mother, a wife, a lieutenant colonel, a community organizer, a public health advocate, a nurse educator, a teacher, a pediatric nurse practitioner, and a beloved school nurse. A decision to name a school after someone, I imagine, can be a challenge. For centuries, our political and business leaders have been called to periodically consider creating public memorials that honor extraordinary people who have been amongst us. The naming of a building is an important community discussion because it memorializes someone who stands out, someone who is an exemplar, and whose actions have deeply impacted others' lives. I believe that Amanda Rowe was an exceptional person who lived and worked amongst us in this modern day, who helped to change our community and impacted lives in such a profound way that naming this school after Amanda would honor her work to our city and also hold her up as an example and inspire others to make contributions as Amanda did. Amanda Rowe, as a nurse, touched so many lives. I was once one of Amanda's students who worked with and watched as she would provide care to students who presented with typical scrapes and cuts, assist a child by removing head lice, administer needed medications, take children to pediatrician appointments, call a parent when their child had a stomach ache, listen and console a crying child, assess physical markings for potential child abuse, and recognize students when they achieve successful moments in their education. Amanda was a district leader who led the district's immunization program, providing influenza vaccines and other immunizations for thousands of children. Moreover, she raised money for an eyeglass fund for children who had no resources to pay for eyeglasses. Amanda was also a statewide leader who influenced health policy for school-aged children and advocated at a national level for improved school health care. Amanda was also a passionate and powerful leader in early childhood health care prevention. Amanda took positions on health care issues that back during the times may have been seen as heretic, but for Amanda as a public health nurse, this was part of her understanding of the total health of our population and how researched health policy can improve the health of its citizens. She had a vision, and she knew how to use resources to improve the health of a population. Amanda was courageous, unflinching, and educated. In many ways, Amanda Rowe was the Florence Nightingale of our time. Amanda helped define and expand the role of a school nurse and create a healthcare system for children in schools that prevented illness, helped heal the sick, and administered care to those who lacked resources. So, for your decision to name the school after Amanda, I believe that when a person who has made such a profound impact that continues to this day and who has worked to change a community and make others' lives better, that it is a sound decision and one that would provide benefit to our whole community. I am one of thousands of people, including present and former Portland school students, who have benefited from Amanda Rowe's leadership. I respectfully ask you to support naming this new school Amanda C. Rowe Elementary School, so in the future, when a child, a parent, or a community member asks, "Who is Amanda Rowe?" it may lead to a discussion about how people who live amongst us can touch so many lives and help improve the overall health of our community, and how we all have a responsibility to care for our community and each other like the way that Nurse Amanda Rowe did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Ross, and I am Amanda Rowe's daughter. I was a Portland resident up until last week when I moved to South Portland, so now my address is 71 Baltimore Avenue in South Portland. But prior to that, I was a resident of Portland for 33 years, and I went to Longfellow, King, and Deering. Anyone who knew anything about Amanda Rowe knew that she was first and foremost a tireless and fearless advocate for children. She devoted 30 years of her life and countless hours, including hours before and after school and on the weekend, to making sure that the children of Portland, and specifically Hall School, were healthy, safe, and had a voice. Whether it was accompanying Room 4 on field trips during their summer program, or allowing a student with anxiety a brief respite in her office to get away from the overwhelming class environment, or accompanying a new student whose parent was a non-English speaker to a doctor's appointment to make sure that all of their questions were answered, or enlisting my father and I to help her spend hours and hours entering in H1N1 flu vaccine data into Excel to submit to the CDC so that the Portland Public Schools could get reimbursed, or spending many nights testifying before the school board to prevent cuts to important health programs. That's just who she was. She always going above and beyond to try to make the world a slightly better place for those around her. No one would be more pleased than Nurse Rowe that Hall is finally being rebuilt, and it is a true honor that she is being considered for the name of the new school. I would like to thank all of you, the members of the school board, for the challenging work that you do on a daily basis, and also thank everyone who shared their stories tonight and spoke in support of Mom. Obviously, being her daughter, my mother had a huge impact on my life, but when I would visit her at Hall in her tiny closet office, or oftentimes when we were out in public, students and former students and staff would come up to me and tell me stories about the difference that she had made in their lives, both in big and small ways. I feel very lucky knowing that she positively impacted the lives of so many other children in the same way she influenced my life. So no matter what name you choose for the new school, I just hope that the halls and classrooms will be filled with her integrity, passion for learning, courage of conviction, strength of character, and compassion for everyone in the school and the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Rowe. I'm a resident of 12 St. Lawrence Street in Portland, and the proud father of Lindsay, and the proud husband of Amanda. I'm going to read this so I don't. Amanda was more than just my wife. She was my mentor and my hero. I first met Amanda in 1980 when we were both Army captains at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We were married in 1981. She agreed to be a mom. to my 3 young children, and we moved to her beloved state of Maine, which became my beloved state of Maine. After working as a nursing instructor at Westbrook College, she started her almost 3-decade career at Portland Public Schools. I've known lots of people who have been passionately and committed to their work in my life. However, I have never known anyone who was as passionate or committed as Amanda. She believed that every child had a right not just to be safe and attend school, but that every child had a right to develop his or her full potential. Every child, all the time, in all situations. She respected and listened to children, really listened, as I hope you heard from some of the former students. I believe that's why so many students enjoyed spending time with her and speaking with her. Amanda, she cared about each of them, and she knew most every student at Hall School by their first and last name. You've heard she was fearless and she was tenacious, and all the adjectives you've heard are true. Those of you who knew her know what I'm talking about. She was a force of nature. Amanda was keenly aware of the relationship between health and education, and she knew that a healthy, safe, and supportive environment, one which advances the health and well-being of students and teachers, promotes effective teaching and learning. That's why she devoted so much of her life to help making school and home environments safe, healthy, and supportive for children. She was not just a school health professional, nurse, she was an educator and leader, and I hope we're making that connection, because you may be concerned about naming a school after somebody who wasn't a teacher or a principal or a U.S. senator or a governor. She wasn't any of those things, but she was a leader, a real leader. And I know that you have documents to provide some examples of her leadership and advocacy for students. I hope you've reviewed that. She worked with families, teachers, and other students to make sure that children always felt safe, that they felt supported. This included those who were not just complaining of physical ailments, but students who were victims of abuse, who were suffering from depression, anxiety, or other emotional or mental conditions. One of Amanda's favorite sayings was, to bring about justice, deal with what's in front of you. And that's what she did. When a child's ability to attend school and learn was limited by acts of prejudice and discrimination based on a child's physical or mental condition, economic class, race, ethnicity, gender identity, or any other factors, Amanda assumed a leadership role to help remove those limitations and those barriers. She was out front early, and she stayed there. We talk about people who perform services above and beyond the call of duty. That's pretty much where Amanda lived. She pretty much was always above and beyond the call of duty throughout her life. She was indeed courageous, she was passionate, and she was tireless. And she was a tireless advocate for children in the Portland Public Schools and their families. And should you decide to name the school after Amanda or rename Hall School after Amanda, you will not just be honoring her life, rather you will be honoring all ordinary Portland Public School employees who, like Amanda, perform extraordinary service, extraordinary acts of service to promote the health and the education of children in their care. So I want to thank all those people who testified. I want to thank the school committee, the committee, the renaming committee, superintendent, assistant superintendent. Thank you all for your time and consideration of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, and I would open it up to discussion for the board. Ms. Thompson.
I was hoping others would talk first. So I, like Steve, had to write this down, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do this, so bear with me. We are here tonight to make a very important decision to possibly rename our new Hall School. I want to thank all of the community members who submitted their suggestions to the Hall School naming panel, who was comprised of Lori Davis, Nick Mavadonis, and I. There were approximately 417 submissions. Your input and participation was greatly appreciated. In full disclosure for those watching at home and here today, Amanda Rowe, who is one of 2 recommended possibilities of names, was one of my closest friends and one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I knew how much, sorry, I promised I wasn't going to do this. I knew how much she loved me, my daughters, Alex and Amanda, and so many around her through her actions. She was a loyal friend who, up until her death, was thinking of those around her. I would just like to share a couple of thousands of memories of Amanda. On a personal note, my Amanda was attending rec camp one year and wasn't happy. And her mother, me being the meanie, told her she had to stay. And when she couldn't get past me, she called Amanda. And Amanda quickly enrolled in the Amanda Rowe daycare. She would not have my Amanda being upset, and for the rest of that week, my Amanda was Amanda's shadow, whether it was gardening, hiking, or going to the movies. My oldest daughter, Alex, followed suit and became a nurse who is now working at Maine Medical Center. While she was in college and taking her anatomy and physiology class, she was struggling a bit. Although Amanda at that time was in hospice care, she would continually tell me that if Alex needed her help, she was available. She was always there. I have so many memories of Amanda that I could talk on and on about her for quite some time. Well, many of you know that Amanda was a Portland Public School nurse for over 30 years and the district nurse coordinator. There was so much more to Amanda. As part of the form the community filled out to submit school name suggestions, there was one question that asked the following: if you want to change the school name, excuse me, if you want to change the school name, what is your first choice for a new name and why? Of the approximate 416 submissions, there were over 300 of that number who submitted Amanda's name. I wanted to take a moment and provide you with some highlights on how the community members answered this question, if you'll bear with me for a few minutes, so you hear the thoughts of those who provided input and were part of the over 300 submissions in Amanda's name. Sorry, hold on. Most incredible nurse who I still admire. Most innovative school nurse who I still admire. She was a huge part of my time at Hall, and everyone who knew her was better for it. Touched many young adults' lives in a very positive way. Held in high regard by teachers citywide. Incredible woman who was loved by everyone. Wonderful lady that truly loved and cared for all the children in the Portland Public Schools. Caring, compassionate, impacted thousands of students. Gave a voice to those who could not speak for themselves. Someone said, my hero, someone who I could always go to for anything. Amazing woman. The school would be lucky to be named after such a courageous and inspiring woman. Tireless in her advocacy, passionate advocate. Portland Public Schools' very finest, nicest nurse in the world. She was my biggest comfort while at school and brought so much life into the school. Wonderful female role model. Always had children's best interests at heart. I'm not going to read all 300, I promise. She made every minute of her life count. Was a force to be reckoned with in advocating for the children of Portland. Amazing and beautiful soul, amazing person. Her memory should live on in a bold and strong way. Local hero dedicated to her work and loved children. Wonderful and admirable woman, wonderful human being. Had a positive effect on so many lives, including mine. Fair treatment of all. Lifeline school nurse. Contributed much to the health and well-being of the students at Hall and throughout the city of Portland. Lives she touched were innumerable. Her warm smile, gentle exterior made her easily approachable by children and families alike. Compassionate, strong, and deeply principled. Legacy should inspire future generations of Portland students. I promise there's only like 10 more. And this was summaried. Most amazing, caring, kid-centered woman. She was a tireless advocate for poor children and children's health services, an incredibly warm and approachable person whose one goal was for parents and children to better understand their own health and wellness and then to treat more effectively. She created a safe and exciting environment to learn, had grit, confidence, and a great sense of fun. No matter your struggles, she would find a way to help. The rock of the school. Someone said, my daughter, who is now a senior in high school, would not have been as successful without the support and love of Amanda. Unique and everlasting. Tireless in her efforts to protect children. And I thought, two people said, I'm certain that Fred P. Hall himself would be honored to know that the school that once bore his name could be renamed for a hero of a different sort. And someone else said, I think Fred P. would be honored to pass the torch. Amanda passed away in 2013, but the students she helped will never forget her. Though she is gone, students today deserve to be able to spend their days learning in the environment of safety and understanding that Amanda Rowe worked tirelessly to create. Putting her name on this school serves not only as a way to remember her and the students she helped, but also serves as a sign to all students who enter to know that they will be coming to learn in an environment where they can be safe and cared for. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Morioni.
Okay, I'm not going to be as blubbery, I promise. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, for your remarks. So this is my 10th year on the board, and often our decisions are hard or take a lot of discussion, and often even lead to sleepless nights at times, particularly around budget season, which it is. But when I saw this was on the agenda, I was excited about this decision. It's the easiest decision I've ever had to make because I was here on the board at the time Amanda Rowe was with us, and I feel very, very privileged. I wish she was with us from the bottom of my heart to help us lead in difficult decisions, but I know that, as Ms. Thompson said, and thank you to all of our community members that came out, to our family members, thank you. I know it must not be easy, but I think this is, again, one of the best ways we can honor someone who gave so much to our schools district and to our students. And our responsibility is to ensure students are safe and feel secure, and she did that day in and day out. And so it is with great pride and a privilege to definitely choose Amanda C. Rowe Elementary School as the new name for Hall. Thank you.
Ms. Yuri.
This will be super short. I had never met Amanda Rowe, but just like being here and hearing these testimonials, like I'm in tears. I think that it will be such a gift and such a privilege for kids going to this new school, for be like, oh, who's Amanda Rowe, and having to have this experience that I've just had right now. And I can tell that I already feel inspired to model the excellence that she clearly exhibited in her life. And I think that's such a gift for students of the future to have that opportunity as well. So, yeah, I also strive to be like Amanda Rowe because it's just so touching right now. So, but yeah, I fully support naming the new school after her. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bendel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And like my colleagues, Ms. Thompson and Ms. Marioni, I've also had the pleasure of being a part of this board during the time when Amanda Rowe was, coming to our meetings, and I even got a vaccination from Amanda Rowe before one of our board meetings one night, and so her history, her legacy, has clearly influenced and been a big part of our school community, and I'm just really proud that we are able to memorialize that and codify that in a new school building, and also in the work that we do in order to teach our students the qualities, the characteristics, the values that Amanda Rowe brought to our school. And my hope is that we continue to bring that each and every day with the students in the new school when it's when they are able to use that next year. And for me, I can think of no greater honor than being able to vote on this tonight. It is one of the, it's a deep pleasure to vote for this and to vote in support of it with so many of our members of the community here, in solidarity. So thank you for being here tonight.
Ms. Davis?
Chairing this committee has been a really honorable journey, a pleasurable journey. We've heard from so many people who have brought forward a wide variety of names with great passion and great feeling. I don't think we really heard names that wouldn't all work. But like many of my board members, I also had the opportunity to work with Amanda when I was No Child Left Behind coordinator for Portland Public Schools for 10 years. Our worlds intersected. We were both in central office at some points, and we were both passionate about making the schools a better place for those students from poverty, from difficult situations, who were struggling to learn. And having heard the many wonderful stories from the public tonight, from the public who came to public hearings, from emails, my fellow colleagues on the board are right. This is an easy decision. It is one that I feel very honored and happy to be able to vote for naming our new school after Amanda. And one of the things that we talked about in the committee and that we definitely want to do is to try and capture some of what we've all heard tonight so that other students like Tiana, who never had the opportunity to know her, really have a way to know who she was and why we chose her to name the school after at this point in time, assuming our vote is that. As we tried to research who Fred Hall was, there really isn't very much. And the committee noted that was unfortunate. That over the passage of time, much of whatever led people to name the school for him at that point in time was lost. And the panel's thinking, and I would urge the board to make sure that that doesn't happen again. That the name becomes a means to educate students about a life well lived, about a leader, about many of the things that Amanda did embody for the students, the staff, the community as a whole across the state. So, as Ms. Morioni said, this is an easy vote for me, and I look forward to casting it tonight.
Mr. Balfons.
We honor people like Fred P. Hall by naming schools after them. That honor may be long, but our community history reveals people worthy of the same honor. We will not dishonor Mr. Fred P. Hall or his legacy by changing the name of a building. We're merely honoring Amanda C. Rowe and her legacy. I will support naming the school after a person who people know as Lieutenant Colonel Rowe, Nurse Rowe, Amanda C. Rowe.
Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you. So I was not fortunate enough to get to know Amanda Rowe, but it struck me through the testimony tonight and all the other communications that we've received that she was ahead of her time. She was living the Portland Promise before the Portland Promise existed. Clearly her work as a nurse was all about supporting the whole student, right? And she had a clear dedication to equity and understood the link that had to achievement and what supports students needed to get their achievement where it needed to be. And lastly, people. I think Amanda, it sounds like she was exactly the kind of person that we want to attract and retain here at Portland Public Schools. So. I think, it's an easy one. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll also be supporting Amanda C. Rowe. I did not know her either. I obviously didn't have the fortune of that, considering the testimony that we've heard both tonight and at the public hearing and through emails. It's been overwhelming stories, and her virtues have been very well testified to. So I wanted to thank the public and board members as well for some obviously very emotional testimony tonight, and to Amanda's family for coming out. That's courageous, and we're happy to hear it. So unless there's any further comment, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of naming the new elementary school the Amanda C. Rowe Elementary School, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. And since it is unanimous, I don't think we need to do the second motion. So. Do you want to take a break? Do you folks want to take a 5-minute break? Sorry. Okay. So let's reconvene. So next we have consideration and action to authorize a request for proposal for architect and engineering services for the renovation of 4 elementary schools under the Buildings for Our Future plan. Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, seconded by Ms. Davis. And we have Councilor Costa, who's co-chair of that committee, here to speak to this item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I hope you'll go with me for just a moment, because I did want to say thank you for your previous vote that you just took. I certainly wasn't going to get up and speak after Steve, but I've had the opportunity to know the Rowes fairly well for a period, and Amanda was definitely someone that I knew, had the pleasure of knowing both personally and professionally, and someone that I could talk to and rely on when I was first elected to the board. So it's a great choice, and I'm really glad to see that. Buildings. We have come to this point after a long process over many years. As all of you know, in the aftermath of the successful referendum in November, you all appointed a committee to oversee the renovation and reconstruction of the 4 elementary schools that were included in the bond package. That group is made up of 3 school board members, 2 city councilors, and 6 members of the public. At your request, I agreed to co-chair that along with Mr. Rodriguez, who's obviously not here this evening, but we have met twice to try to proverbially get the ball rolling on this. So we met twice in rapid succession relatively recently to consider basically the staff's recommendation for a first step going forward. I'll try to keep it extremely high level, and we can get into as many details as we want. But basically, over a period of months, school staff, Mr. Stilfen, has been in contact with city staff that have a lot of expertise managing these school renovation projects. In particular, the Deputy City Manager, Anita LaChance, has been involved in virtually every one we've done for a very long time in the city of Portland. So after that kind of consultation, staff came forward with a recommendation of how to move forward. That recommendation is basically twofold. It's to begin with an RFP, a request for proposals for an architectural and engineering firm. That basically separates the design part of this process from the actual construction part of it, which will come significantly later. There's a long history of doing that for public school renovations. In particular, staff that I spoke to generally view it as very well suited to the needs of a public process. because the design is separated and hence has an opportunity for significant public input as it gets developed with the architectural engineering firm on board. And then later on, once those designs are finalized, then there will be a separate RFP for construction services to actually build the facilities. So in terms of how it's being demarcated, that's sort of what it is. The second portion, or the second component of the staff recommendation is a concrete recommendation for how to begin this series of projects. For a variety of reasons, staff recommends that the process begin with the Lyseth School. There's a number of reasons for that, which the superintendent and staff can speak to, certainly. But that's the recommendation that was brought forward to the committee. The committee reviewed that in a series of meetings, had an opportunity to ask a lot of questions of school facilities staff. You know, we're not going to get everything that we want at every step. Everyone wants everything to go 2 to 4 times as fast as it can realistically be done, and everyone wants every school to be the first school that's going to be done. But the committee understands the staff recommendation. We understand the rationale for it. We spent quite a lot of time reviewing that, and ultimately the committee, with the exception of Ms. Thompson, I'll just note because she had left, I think you were going to a national school board conference or something the following morning. The committee unanimously recommended that we do move forward, or that you all move forward with the recommended staff process with the distinct RFP for architectural and engineering services, and that it begin with the Lyseth School. Again, staff can speak to that in more detail, but those are the broad strokes outlines of what's being proposed. I think the only other significant item that I would note is, from a policy perspective, is that one provision of the RFP does allow the school system to move forward with additional projects with the same architectural and engineering firm based on this RFP. The idea of that being that if we go through the first process and begin to get that the Lyseth School designed and are very satisfied with that, obviously we'd be able to accelerate the time frame by sticking with a firm that we already have a relationship with and are satisfied with their work. Obviously that's what we would like to see, but so the RFP gives the authority to the school department to continue to go forward with further design of future schools on the basis of this RFP, but it doesn't obligate you to do that. So I think that's sort of the high-level points. But this is the first concrete step to realize the vision that we have been working on for quite some time, and that was approved at referendum last November. And if there are any questions for the committee, I'm happy to take those, and certainly staff is able to weigh in with any more detailed questions.
Thank you. Questions? Anything staff want to, Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Counselor. I guess I just want to understand, it sounds as if it was already discussed in the 2 meetings, the order of the schools, and you said that there was lots of discussion around that, and I'm glad there was. I guess I'm just a little surprised that it doesn't come back to the board to just either know the order of the schools and/or to discuss it in some way. It seems as if it's already gone, that the committee has decided to do this and staff's agreed, and now we're moving forward with this. So just help me understand better. Maybe I missed it. Maybe in our, when we were forming the committee, this was part of the committee and we were just handing it over to them to decide the order of the schools. But I don't know if any of my fellow board members that maybe aren't on this committee are feeling like I'm feeling, but I'm feeling a little surprised that it's already been decided that the order of the schools.
Well, if I could.
Maybe it came here and I missed a meeting or something. But yeah.
No, but it's the reverse of that. The advisory committee is there to make a recommendation to the board. So ultimately, that's your decision to make. Obviously not mine anymore. I ran for a different thing. But what the committee was reviewing was staff's recommendation. So there's a staff rationale that I don't want to put words in their mouth, so they can certainly speak to that. But broadly, I would say that there were several things. One is that it's always been contemplated from the Oak Point work that you were going to need to start with either Lyseth or Presumpscot because you need the potential to take those modular units and move them around and use them ultimately as flex space. The second element which played into that, which I want to tread carefully because it's my job to represent the view of the committee, but it was the recommendation of staff to move forward with Lyseth, partly in anticipation of the board wanting to have a discussion about the possibility of elementary school consolidation. And so moving forward with Presumpscot was not their recommended route based on the feeling that the board wanted to have that conversation in full. So those, I think, are the two major items. A close third would just be that there are other specific facilities concerns that go into it. I want to be careful in how I frame this too. There are a lot of new individuals in the particular roles that will oversee this project. And so part of it is a desire to make sure that we can start well and start successfully. And so taking on the most difficult projects first gives people some angst. And then also just on the pure facility side too, it's ease of construction and how it ties in with potential other projects. So there is obviously, because there's an adjacent middle school, an opportunity for additional flexibility during the actual renovations of Lyseth. It does also dovetail with some of the other CIP work that's going to be done on the surrounding fields and stuff like that. I think I'm doing.
Can I just a couple things. First of all, this is part of the decision that you're making today. So you are, in approving our RFP, you're approving starting with Lyseth, understanding that, everything subsequent to that you will also have to approve. So in your packet, you have the rationale for project sequencing, which was a document that we developed in preparation for that decision or actually as a result of the discussions that the committee had. So if you look at that, that gives you the sort of the underpinnings of how we're thinking about this project, but that is part of what you are being asked. So the committee did not make the decision. The committee is making a recommendation that the board is being asked to act on, and they were acting on the recommendation that staff made to them. So the one thing that I want to underscore, and I think that Councilor Acosta did touch on that, is the idea that the way that this RFP, I guess a couple things. One, that the RFP is crafted in such a way that should we feel as we begin the Lyseth project that the engineering and architecture firm is in a position to be able to craft the plans for the other schools, that we have the ability to move forward with that. So it gives us the ability to begin, specific elements of the projects in some of the other schools. So I think that that's one of the rationales that were important to the committee in unanimously endorsing this decision. And I think the other one is the notion that Mr. Stilfen can speak to much more credibly than I can, that Councilor Acosta touched on, which is let's get off the ground in a good way, in a positive way, with a project that is successful and breeds a belief that we have the capacity to bring this to fruition. I think that was another big part of the committee's consideration and decision to move this forward as their recommendation.
Mr. Stilfen, did you want to add to that?
Facilities Director, Portland Public Schools, Steve Stilfen. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair. Question, Counselor? Could you repeat the question?
Well, I think the thing for me was just that we're voting on RFP, but it also seems as if it's already been decided that Lyseth will be the first one based on the committee's review and discussion. However, I guess I thought there'd be more points where the committee would then bring something, which, yes, you're bringing this now for a vote to us, but that there would be more of a, particularly in the order of the schools, there would be more opportunity for the board to weigh in and discuss, and not only the board, but also the community to weigh in and the order of the sequencing of the schools.
In the process of procurement, the vehicle is the request for proposal. In our procurement process, we were required to identify a school. So the matrix and the rubrics that we use to identify and take criteria for each of the schools and measure those points to come up with a staff's view of the time, the budget, and also scope and equity across the period of time for the 4 schools to be renovated. We needed to choose that RFP, name that a school. So through that rubrics, we came up with a recommendation to the committee to move forward with a singular RFP by the procurement method that is that we use in the city and the school to bring that RFP naming Lyseth or any of the other schools that would have weighed out heavier in that rubrics would have been in that RFP. So that's what we recommended to the committee to move forward for your recommendation or vote tonight.
So based on what the superintendent just said, with our approval of this, we're also approving the order of the other schools and rebuilding?
No.
Okay, because that's what I understood you just said.
This is a singular decision.
Okay.
No.
This is just for Lyseth, and then has the committee discussed the order of the other 3 schools?
No, and in fact, we explicitly, I as co-chair tried to explicitly shut down that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Because that, we are under a bit of a time crunch. Obviously it took some time to get this group constituted. A major point was to try to stay on schedule so that you all could make a decision as fast as possible, because they need to get the RFP out so that ultimately we can get shovels in the ground in the time frame that's contemplated. Without getting too much into the details, we can't build 12 months a year in this state in our climate. So there's a real world impact to getting delayed at some of these early stages. So the advisory group was working very much to try to get this to you as fast as possible, which is sort of working backwards from the initial shovel in the ground date. So we deliberately kind of shut down the overarching plan for how every single facility is going to tie together, and said, okay, we can at least come together and say that we will give deference to the staff recommendation, and we can recommend that to you all. The point that was made is that in the RFP itself, you could write it to just say, we want a request for proposals to design this school, and leave it at that. What this RFP does is also add in a clause that we could extend it to the design of other schools down the line. So that's why, if we're satisfied with the work that's being done and like this, we wouldn't want to have to go back to another RFP and take more time and staff energy and effort and money to go through a second RFP process if we're thrilled with the work that we get on the first project. That's what I was referring to, so hopefully that's...
I guess I just don't want it to become the staff and or the committee and or collectively the two without bringing it to the board. I was under the impression that the committee would continue to bring it to the board, and I understand this is our first look at this. Because we also have another part in there, which was the community outreach piece of it with the PTO involvement. And so I just want to make sure that we're not moving. I'm happy that this is moving forward. I understand that we wanted it to be moving as quickly as we could. However, I just want to ensure that the community's up to speed, knowing about it as well, and that we don't move too fast along with the committee deciding, okay, and this will be our next school, and we like this firm, so we're going to continue to move along without the board being the ones who are making that decision at each step. So if I approve this RFP tonight, I'm a little reluctant only in the sense because I don't, what you were just saying about having it ability to continue to keep this same firm and move to the next school, I just don't want that to happen without a continual check-in. So I'm a little like,
There would
again,
absolutely be, if we were to move ahead to not do another RFP, and instead, because we like the architecture and engineering firm, before we said we're going to ask the architecture and engineering firm to help us design the second project, we would have the same conversation that we had leading up to the first project, and you would, as a board, have the opportunity to approve or not approve the recommendation that comes to you from the Advisory Building Committee.
Yeah, so I should emphasize, there are no decisions made by this group. You're the decision makers. All that we're doing is making a recommendation. In general, I think that I agree with you, and I think that most members of the committee, I always hesitate to put words in other people's mouth, but I think everyone agrees with what you're saying. I think in this particular one, we can't have our first meeting until we have all our members, and then based on that, there's a reason we met twice in 5 days or whatever it was, which was to meet this. For the second project, we're going to be a lot more in control of that, and so we'll be able to do a much more robust public process leading into that. But what we wanted to do is make sure that we met the guidelines to keep the project construction on schedule. My strong feeling that I think all the other committee members agreed with was that it would be wildly inappropriate for the advisory group to put you all in a position where you couldn't make a decision to stay on time frame because we thought that it was going too fast. Because again, you're the decision makers. So for us to back you into a corner like that and say, oh, sorry, we didn't give you anything to vote on, so now Steve can't get the RFP out, and we're not going to have the firm hired in time to get the design done, to hire the construction firm to have shovels in the ground at the expected time frame. That I didn't feel that was an appropriate position for an advisory group to put you all in.
Well, I appreciate all the remarks, and I just want to underscore the fact that I appreciate that this committee is continuing to bring it back to the board and definitely making sure that that next layer of communicating to the public and the community is being used as well. And because, we worked long and hard on how to make sure that all of those layers were being
Let me speak to that quickly, because
Sure.
I just want to make sure that you're clear on the next step would be to constitute the building-based advisory committee for Lyseth once we got into that design. So once we have an engineering and architecture firm selected, at that point, the process that you all approved back in March was a process where we would then constitute that building.
only after it's decided that
That's
that
right.
building starts to be.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I should say that there is, while certainly far from perfect, the constitution of the advisory group does have people from every neighborhood.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
everyone has probably their own personal preference of which school they would love to go first, but everyone could see the wisdom of proceeding as staff was recommending.
Well, I don't mean in any way to diminish the work of staff and the work of the committee. I really do appreciate it. You're moving along as quickly as possible with this. I just want to ensure that we're sticking to the board having the final say, and this vote obviously is the one. But thank you for indulging me with all that discussion. Thanks.
Other questions? Mr. Atkinson.
Yeah. I was wondering about some of the more granular and programmatic decisions that need to be made, and what sort of the time frame is on that, and how set, like in particular, there are some things at the beginning in the sort of scope of work section around a space for gifted and talented, pre-K, kindergarten. How set are those ideas? How does that evolve? How do we get from the sort of large scale down to the details?
That will be produced with architect and engineering input on standards that we set, which are broad-based and equitable across, reaching out to 5 years possibly to construct these schools. So we would go from our history of what we've done in Ocean, in East End, and currently at Hall. So we're having that type of standard already in place so we can measure with the architect engineer against scope, cost, time, and so forth. So that's what comes with an architect and engineer, with our input from staff and our history of how we've maintained that learning environment. So it's not that granular yet.
Right, and so I guess the building advisory committees then would have, I imagine, a lot of input at that stage as we get into the more granular. Is that, am I right?
Yes, from our first 2 meetings, I would say absolutely yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there is a timeline, a full timeline in the packet that, that lays out the, sort of from this point all the way through to shovels in the ground. It doesn't get to that level of detail in terms of who makes those decisions, so I appreciate Steve explaining that process happens once we have the engineering and architecture firm contracted, because if you look at the RFP, you'll see that there's a broad delineation of what is expected to happen, but the specific decisions around what happens in, all of those other things, that's by design, if you recall, is what the building level advisory committee is charged with doing.
Great. One other question was around the construction costs. Construction costs rise. What sort of adjustment have we made to make sure that we don't run out of money before we get to all 4 of the schools?
There was Oak Point's original BFOF history was a escalator of average of 18% built in up to 3 years ago. That stopped. The clock is ticking from when that stopped. So from the numbers now escalating forward is going to take diligence, nimbleness, good committee work, and good contractors, and getting an architect engineer on board to streamline this process and to use the clause, hopefully. My best hope would be that we get it right the first time and love the architect engineer, get him rolling on the design of the second school sometime during the construction of the first school, and start to move from there. So to decrease that timeline. And the harder realities are, we'll see where we are, and then we must maintain equity across the schools from the first school to the last school, so we need to use a crystal ball a little bit, but you get that information from your architect engineer, see what the contractors are delivering and what prices are at the time, and you make your best judgments, and you nail down your scope as tightly as you can. And that's about the best answer I can give you right at this moment.
Is it fair to say, Steve, that the expectation would be that the cost associated with building the first school would be de-escalated from the amount that was approved, because it would be the first school that was that is being built, and so you don't have to. So let's just say that there was $20 million for that school. The expectation would be that it would cost less than that, because the escalator was built into all 4 of the projects across the board. So, as projects are teed up, then you can sort of de-escalate that amount, and that's an amount that you can set aside for the other projects for their added escalation. So.
Great, yeah, that was exactly what I was hoping to get at, is that we're setting
Let's just
aside
make
some
sure that
reserve.
that's accurate.
Yeah.
That's accurate, Mr. Superintendent, and the LICEF's numbers were the highest numbers, so you're getting a bonus on that by doing that school first as well, not exposing it to longer term.
Yep, that sounds wise. The only other question that I had was around fair contracting. I don't know if that was a discussion that the committee had at all, or?
That's, I don't want to say well in the future, that's in the future. That's not related to this part at all. And part of the rationale for this two-tiered approach, so there'll be this RFP for basically the design, that's the architecture and engineering. And then once we get the design, then you're going to issue an RFP to take on a contractor to actually manage the project. So that would be the point at which any discussion about something like that will come into play.
Great, and would your committee come forward with a recommendation on that, or would you expect the board to take that on?
It's not something that we've really discussed. I think we would have to talk about it, but, I guess ultimately, the charge is up to the school board for you all to say. To my mind personally, I don't see that as particularly something that this committee would get into. The bigger picture we are, the ordering of the schools, the design, that sort of thing, to my mind, that's more of the focus for this committee. The more it gets operationalized, the less that becomes a committee function and even a school board function, and the more that becomes staff's work. As far as a policy recommendation, I don't know. I don't view the charge right now as us having been asked to review that. Maybe that's the simplest way of putting it.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing no questions, we would take public comment on this item. No. Seeing no public comment, discussion. Ms. Davis?
I would just remind the board that we do have, as was mentioned, we have 6 members of the general public on the advisory board, and they weighed in vigorously in the discussion, and the vote was unanimous. We also had, I believe that meeting was attended by members of the press, and there were articles written about it, so it did have a degree of public involvement. I think there were articles in the Forecaster.
I think that the Forecaster asked follow-up questions, but they did not.
Maybe they weren't at the meeting.
At the meeting, but they did ask follow-up questions based on the fact that this was on our agenda. So,
yeah. But the public was there and did really wrestle with the issues presented by staff. So there was public input at the advisory committee level. So.
Any other board discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of authorizing a request for a proposal for architect and engineering services for the renovation of 4 elementary schools under the Buildings for Our Future plan, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Consideration and action to revise policy BEDBA, agenda format. Is there a motion? Mr. Atkinson, seconded by Ms. Davis. Would the superintendent like to speak to the motion?
yes, this is a request that we are bringing forward after it's been through the policy committee. We are asking to have the board agenda items modified and bring the focus on educational issues up to earlier in the agenda, so it would follow consent items before we get into the old business part of the agenda. The thinking behind that was that, as you know, those oftentimes involve members of the community, staff, sometimes students who come to share programmatic information with the board, and sometimes they wind up sitting through long discussions around business items that we are trying to avoid. And so the idea behind that was to try to move focus on educational issues up to earlier in the agenda so that we would be able to get those items done. Those are not action items, so they are, always informational, and they would just basically follow before we get into the action items on the agenda.
Any questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Morioni.
I'm happy to support this, I think, only if there's a way that we can, and I think you've already indicated it through our discussions, Superintendent, was to limit the time there, only because I know oftentimes it can be really long. And I just say that our work as board members happens when we actually take action and we vote. So I think the information is extremely helpful, but I just don't want it to be extremely long in that portion. So that's my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? See, Ms. Davis.
I would concur that sometimes the presentations have gone long, so I think making sure that whoever is presenting has got their presentation finally honed and there's time for us to ask questions. But I like having it at that point in time. I think it is respectful of their time. And by having it fit within a specific time frame, it will help the presenters to actually focus and hone their presentation to bring us the information and the community, because it's being televised, so it's a teachable moment for the whole community, to bring that to us in a very focused and coherent way that doesn't go on too long.
Any other discussion? Mr. Atkinson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm excited to support this. I think it's going to be great to bring our focus on education to the front of the meeting, because as we've seen tonight, people clear out, and this is the work that we do, and we want to showcase that as much as we can. So I think this gives us an opportunity to do that better.
Any other comment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of revising policy BEDBA agenda format, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Moving into new business, we have a first read to authorize the board chair and superintendent to sign a contract with the Long Island School Department to provide educational services for Great Diamond Island students in grades K through 5. And we have a first read to authorize the board chair and superintendent to sign a contract with the Long Island School Department to provide educational services for Long Island students in grades 6 through 12. There is no personnel this evening. There is no board focus on educational issues. And where it is before the hour of 10 o'clock, we would invite anyone wishing to address us for public comment on any non-agenda item to approach the podium. Please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Awesome. My name is Natalie Yarrett. I live on 77 Walnut Street here in Portland. I am part of a new nonprofit here in the area called Peak Pursuits, which some of you may or may not have heard of. I know I sent you an email about us. But I just wanted to come tell you who we are and see if there's any way we can partner with public schools here in town. So we're an outdoor education program for kids ages 10 to 15. We take kids outdoors 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, within a 30-minute vicinity of Portland to Casco Bay, state parks, nature preserves, etc. We have Maine Guide volunteers out the wazoo who are partnering with us to teach kids all kinds of backcountry skills, fly fishing, how to build a fire, orienteering, things like that. And then we pick up, drop off kids those days at schools or neutral locations that we're determining based off of where kids are signing up from. So we have kids who are interested, mostly from King, Lincoln, and more, right? I'm still kind of new to the Portland area, but we're wondering if there's any way we can partner with public schools, and I know that's always a tricky topic. And if we aren't able to partner with public schools, we just want to make sure we're doing everything that they would need for us to be legal and kosher and work well together. We want to be friends with one another. And we just want to get kids outside. We want to get them away from screens and teach them. Some kids don't have the opportunity to go and learn these types of skills or see the places that are right in their backyard. So we're providing scholarships for students who aren't able to pay, lower income families. Otherwise, we're starting at $15 a day for people who are able to pay that. But we're 100% philanthropically funded through grants and family foundations around Maine. So we're prepared to launch that full-time in the fall. And we do have a Survivor Week program, which we're calling this launching next month, where we're picking up school kids going out to 3 different locations those days, and pilot program for Peak Pursuits. So that's a little bit about what we do. Happy to answer any further questions you might have about the program, and just wondering if there's any way we can work together to achieve those goals.
Yep, Superintendent.
I'll be glad to meet with you and we can figure that out.
Okay, perfect. Totally worth my time of coming here, though.
I was going to say, I was going to email you back and put you directly in touch with the superintendent, so maybe you can just connect after the meeting.
Great. Yes, no worries. I just was so intrigued to come to the meeting. I just had to come to myself. And I'm a nurse in the area, so that was actually really inspiring to hear all about Miss Roy, too. Lovely. Well, thank you so much, and I'll let you set that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing that there are no other members of the public, I will close public comment and call for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Morioni, seconded by Mr. Balfont. All those in favor? It's unanimous with the students voting in the majority.